When could the matrix become a reality? Is it possible that technologies like virtual reality and the metaverse could be used to create simulations in which people will live without knowing that they're living in a simulation? As always, the astrology gives us the hidden backgrounds and meanings of things. It tells us how things fit into the larger evolution of consciousness, and it tells us about the timings and the cycles that determine when things happen, which is why we're going to use astrology in this video to give an answer to the question of when the matrix can become a reality. Right, let's get into it. So the question whether we live in a simulation has always interested philosophers. Philosophers like Plato, who talked about 2,500 years ago, talked about the cave allegory, which is about people living in a cave and only seeing projections of things that are passing by outside and not knowing that what they're seeing is not the real reality. Or also a philosopher like René Descartes, who talked about the malingénie, the evil genius, that could be a demon that creates a simulation and then traps you in that simulation. And his question was, how do you know that you're not in such a simulation? But apart from the questions that philosophers have posed and spiritual gurus have posed on the nature of reality, the Indian tradition, for instance, spoke of the nature of reality as Maya, or a dream-like nature that we're part of. Now, apart from those spiritual and philosophical traditions, the question of whether we could actually live in a simulation only became very present for the general populace and for the collective consciousness after the movie The Matrix. The Matrix really was the cultural artifact that placed this thought into everybody's minds. So let's watch this little scene from The Matrix, which gives us a little intro into this.
Right now, we're inside a computer program.
Is it really so hard to believe? Your clothes are different, the plugs in your arms and head are gone. Your hair has changed. Your appearance now is what we call residual self-image. It is the mental projection of your digital self.
This isn't real.
What is real? How do you define real? If you're talking about what you can feel, what you can smell, what you can taste and see, then real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain. This is the world that you know. The world as it was at the end of the 20th century. It exists now only as part of a neural interactive simulation that we call the Matrix.
What is real if your sensory apparatus, your cognitive apparatus receives inputs that are, for all intents and purposes, indistinguishable from the sensory inputs that you will receive from a physical environment? Then how would you know you are not in a simulation? These were some questions that the Matrix posed, but more importantly, during the time when the Matrix came out in the 90s, that was a phase when the very thought of a simulated reality became widespread. And this, astrologically, is connected with the Neptune-Uranus cycle. So the 80s and 90s, the late 80s and 90s, actually, let's look at the chart to see exactly when the time is. But this phase, it was connected to the emergence, or it correlated with the emergence of a new worldview, which has this element of the simulation or the virtual reality in it, and which really plants this meme or this thought into our culture, right? So let's look at the chart here. You can see this, and we've got here 95. So this starts, I only have like the outer planets here, No need to look at the others, that will be distracting. So you see 1988, it starts, 88, 89, it starts, it's in, and then 93, it's perfect. Here, you see here, 93, it's perfect. And then it goes, it's still here, perfect. 94 is when the Wachowskis, they conceived of the Matrix, the plot, they wrote the Matrix, or they received the vision for it, right? Under the exact conjunction. And then it continues and goes out 97, 98, 99 is when it's like the final, the end of the conjunction, and this is when the movie is published, the Matrix, right? So it falls exactly in this conjunction. Also, keep in mind, people who are born under this conjunction, so people who are born from between 98, let's say 1998, right? 1988 and 1998 or 99, right? People who are born in this time frame, they are basically, they carry this imprint of the revolution of the worldview, right? Of the the Uranus-Neptune conjunction, basically bringing a new worldview. They carry that in themselves. I call this generation the mystic rebels. If you know anybody born between, or yourself born between 1988 and 1998, those 10 years, they're the mystic rebels, right? It's the job of this generation to push forward the emergence of a new worldview, right? Of a completely new perspective on the world. And they actually have, this generation, they have the certain superpower of having access to altered states of consciousness much faster than others, right? So if previous generations, they had to do a lot of work, meditation, or take certain substances to get access to altered states of consciousness, the mystic rebels born between 1988 and 1998, they have immediate access to altered states of higher states of consciousness. But, or at least, a lot of them, very frequently, much more frequently than previous generations, right? And this ability, it comes with certain dangers as well. It's not just positive, because this generation also has a much larger danger or risk of getting lost in fantasy worlds and imaginary worlds, right? So whether that's computer video games where people do role-playing games and get lost in those, or whether that's avatars or social media kind of groups that they're part of, and which become more important than their actual lives, or it's just kind of escapism or escaping into fantasy worlds, right? Or drugs as well, Technologically speaking, that phase 88 till 98, it's really important for all the, lots of breakthroughs. And actually this cycle, Uranus-Neptune cycle, it's throughout, the whole cycle, it's connected with advancements in virtual reality and simulations, and the changing of and the simulating of reality, right? So I can give you some examples to illustrate this. So, for example, Jaron Lanier, one of the great pioneers of the virtual reality space, right? When you look at him, very interesting personality, plays lots of old instruments and is an outspoken critic of everything that could go wrong with virtual reality and with social media, trapping people into simulated realities. Very interesting, actually, that he would be so aware of it. If you look at his chart, you can tell why. Because this guy, he's born under a Uranus-Neptune square, right? So the square is the more difficult aspect, right? Here, the Uranus-Neptune square. And he's got his sun in that as well. So the sun is you see here, the sun is in opposition to Neptune, right? And is square to Uranus, right? So I didn't draw this very well, but you can see this here, right? The sun with Uranus with Neptune, right? Neptune, Uranus square, and square sun. So the square, right, as a hard aspect, it gives you an understanding of the difficulties, right? The difficulties that are connected to this constellation, right? So he's very well aware of the problems and the difficulties that can come from being lost in imaginary worlds. He actually famously wrote a book on why he deleted all of his social media accounts, because he was so acutely aware of the dangers of social media, creating this fantasy world for people, and people losing touch with physical reality, and with developing their own talents and their own personalities and characters, right? And Gerard Lanier, he was not just born under the square of Neptune, Uranus. He's founded his company called VPL Research, right? In the late 80s, when the new conjunction was coming in, and then in the 90s they released a lot of their tech, which was very revolutionary tech. So they released something called the data suit and the iPhone not with I, but with an EYE, right? So that's where Apple got their idea from. But, right, the iPhone, but it was basically a first kind of virtual reality equipment, a really useful virtual reality equipment. This was presented under the conjunction of Uranus, Neptune. Even if you look back further into the cycle, right? If you look back further, you will see that the previous developments in virtual reality, they're all connected as well with with Uranus, Neptune. So this guy, Ivan Sutherland, right? He developed something called Damocles sword, which was a very early device around virtual reality, a virtual reality device. And it was, at the end of the 60s, 65, I think 67, they brought it out to actually, for people to use it and to make it like available for research, right? And if you look at his chart, you will see that, not just himself, he was born under the trine, right? So the very easy flowing axis, right, of Neptune, Uranus. Not just he is born under the trine, but also his apparatus. If you look at it, I'm just going to go back here quickly. If you look at it, it's also coming out in the 60, at the end of the 60s, when you had a sextile here of Neptune, Uranus, right? So basically you can see clearly that the cycle of Neptune, Uranus is completely connected to the development of virtual reality, right? Completely tied up with the development of virtual reality. I can actually show you more. There's far more that I could show you. For instance, the Wachowskis, right? The Wachowski, they used to be Wachowski brothers, and then they became the Wachowski sisters, right? They both basically, they both underwent a sex change, right? Both of them, not just one. And the Wachowskis also born under Uranus, Neptune sextile, right? And obviously they were very important and instrumental in bringing this idea forward. And there's far more. Neil Stephenson, he published Snow Crash, which was the first book to introduce the term the Metaverse in 1992 at the peak of the Neptune-Uranus conjunction, right? Or just when it was kind of exactly in aspect, right? So if you look at the important developments of virtual reality, you will find them very closely correlated with the Neptune-Uranus cycle, as I just gave you a bunch of examples for it. So now that we know this, what can we say about when we could expect the next breakthroughs in virtual reality and in potentially even having a full-scale, full-blown simulation of reality like the Matrix? So I can give you a real answer on this, but before I give you an answer, I actually want you to think about this a little bit, that why is it actually preferable for us to live in a real reality, right, as opposed to a simulated reality? And this is not just some abstract philosophical question for you to think about. It's actually something you should ponder and take seriously. Why? Because there are agendas out there that want people to give up actual life, actual ownership of things, actual access to material things, and instead be content with living in a simulated reality, right? So this exactly what the Matrix wanted us, exactly what the Matrix put people into in the movie is something that is being thought through by certain people, by the Great Reset agenda, where there is the thought that people shouldn't own anything, people shouldn't have any personal resources, but they should just still be content, they should still be happy. So how do you do that? How do you keep people happy? Well, you can give them the dream and the imagination that they can be anything they want, even though it's not real, right? For all intents and purposes, for your brain it's real. And this is a thought that we have to contend with, that we have to deal with, we have to reflect on. There's a character in the Matrix called Cypher who really interestingly presents this problem. Let's have a look.
Do we have a deal, Mr. Reagan?
I know this steak doesn't exist. I know that when I put it in my mouth, the Matrix is telling my brain that it is juicy and delicious. After 9 years, you know what I realize? Ignorance is bliss.
Then we have a deal.
And he goes on to say that he wants to be someone who's rich and famous, someone like an actor. And the idea here is that if you're given the illusion that you can be whatever you want to be, then would you accept this illusion? Would you prefer this illusion if for your brain it's real, if it feels real, it looks real, you experience it as real? Would you accept this as opposed to living, without any means, living in some pod, living without access to resources, like the Great Reset agenda is looking to render a lot of the global population, the useless eaters, right? The people who will become redundant because of automation and AI and other factors, right? In that vision or in that agenda. So if people are then given a choice to be whoever they want to be in the simulated world, in the Matrix, will they take it? Possible to say that a lot of people would take it. So should we accept this deal like Cypher? Should we accept to live in a simulated reality where we can be whatever we want to be, while we also accept that in the real world, all the power goes to a small elite who obviously they will not live by these rules. They will not live in the simulation. They will be able to do whatever they want, be able to leave the planet and start a new civilization elsewhere, potentially upgrade themselves into superhumans and so on. Now, should we accept this deal? Obviously, the answer is no, because even though the simulation could, for all intents and purposes, be 99.9% close to reality, it is still a deception. It is a deception. God does not want you to live in a deception. If you are close to God, you will not want to live in and through and as a deception, right? The deception is the work of the devil, not of God. So there is no spiritual reality in the simulation. There's no spiritual energies, no spiritual bliss in the simulation. Only the fake version of it. Only the fake version of it. You can never attain the fake version. You can never attain the fullness. You can never attain. Imagine if somebody in a simulation, for instance, let's say they live a great, beautiful life and so on, what they think is a beautiful life in the simulation, can they actually become a saint? Can they actually attain a level of holiness? Can they actually attain a level of direct connection with the divine, with Godhead? They can't, because there's an element of deception in there. It's deception. It's not the divine unfolding of reality as we are intended to live it in the world. So now, that being said, I still want to give you the timing on when we can expect the simulation, the matrix, to become a reality. So let's look at the charts. So as I've identified clearly, everything to do with developments in virtual reality, the metaverse, simulated realities, it's to do with the Neptune-Uranus cycle. So the Neptune-Uranus cycle is what matters, what we have to look at most. Let's have a look. So we are now in 2024, and as we're going into 2025, 26, 7, you can see here, right? You can see we're getting this sextile here, right? 26, 7, we're getting the sextile. So that's the next easy aspect or smooth and flowing aspect that's coming in 27. 27, and it goes, let's see how it goes on. The story unfolds further. 28, right? You have this perfect, and it's actually Pluto is in here too. It's not just, you see here, it's not just Neptune and Uranus, but Pluto is in here too, right? Pluto is in here too, forming this beautiful triangle, right? So this is a very powerful constellation actually, which can bring a lot of change, a lot of introduction of new systems and new systemics, right? So 27, 28, we have a free-flowing introduction of new possibilities, specifically what we're interested in now in the realm of virtual reality, right? This is not the only thing it stands for. There will be a lot of new, completely new worldviews introduced in these years, right? And we're going to look at other things to do with these years, if potentially there's going to be some bad things happening in these years, if there's potentially going to be wars. But this is other videos. Right now, we're only interested in this. Neptune, Uranus, right? Neptune, Uranus, and you see it's still in effect until 29. So, right, 26 starts, 27, 28, 29. These 3 years are going to see the smooth and easy and free-flowing development of this energy. What does that mean? It means far more virtual reality technologies, right? So if you think about what we currently have in virtual reality technologies, in these 3 years, in these 4 years, 27, 28, 29, we're going to see far more virtual reality breakthroughs, right? We're going to see haptic. We're going to see fully immersive suits, fully, rendering, which is far higher quality, right? So far more immersive, and not just on the visual level, but on all levels, audio, haptic, right? So this is, and then we're going to see far more applications in this space. The space is going to explode with applications in these 3 years. So not investment advice, but if you're looking at stocks, if you're looking at companies, right? Think about that field, virtual reality, AR, and related fields for 28, 29, 27, 28, 29. Now, okay, so what's next? So we have this breakthrough, right? We have this big breakthrough. What's next? And then it goes on, story goes on, lots of things happen. And then we have 39, 40, 40, 41. You see, we have the square. So the square is when we get the difficult stuff, right? The challenging and difficult stuff. The square is when we get this challenging and difficult stuff. When is that? 2040. 2040 also kind of fits with potentially the development of AGI, artificial general intelligence, right? Which would be necessary to sustain a kind of fully immersive simulation. Obviously, you would need super high level artificial intelligence. So 40 and 39, that's where we're going to see the harsh and difficult and challenging expressions of the virtual reality developments of this cycle, right? Which started in the 90s, with the Matrix and these new ideas of what it could be like to live in a simulation. It started in the 90s, right? And what started in the 90s, it's going to get its next level of incredible advances in 2027, 2028, 2029. We're going to see incredible advances in virtual reality technologies. And then around 2040, 2039, 2040, that's when potentially you can see actually being built fully immersive, real simulations that are like the Matrix and which are potentially going to be used as dystopian traps to trap people inside them by those people who have those agendas, by the people who want to trap and subdue the masses so that small elites can snatch away the resources of the planet and all the abundant opportunities and possibilities that new technologies offer for us. Now, we are part of this story as well, and we are not going to let the oligarchs and the plutocrats get away with their agendas. We're not going to let the Great Reset agenda be implemented on the people without resistance. There will be resistance. There will be far more chapters to the story. There will be so many other aspects which we have to explore and look at. So let's do this together. In my future videos, I'm going to look at other aspects, other technologies like AI and robotics and drones and biotechnology to change the very makeup of the human body. And we're going to understand how things fit into the cycles and what the timings are for things. If you want to find out more about specific technologies that you want me to do first, then let me know in the comments. Let me know how you would feel about living in a simulation. If you would take the Cypher deal or if you would not, and what your reasoning is about it. I'll look forward to reading your comments. Drop them below. Also, subscribe, follow, like, share, be part of the community. And I'm Dr. V. All the best.